All right. So I did go back to, well, one way is how do we make Congress less corrupt? And that's what I love about Popular Information and Judd Legum. Support his publication. He's one of the best out there. He follows the money. He's been keeping companies accountable to their words about what they say they're going to do on their donations to both Republicans as well as Democrats, but mostly the Republicans that had challenged the certification of the election and the hypocrisy of the companies that have first said that they were not going to donate to these lawmakers, and now all of a sudden the money's flowing back in, and he's following that. We appreciate that. I love anybody that follows the money. Robbie Yeager, Sludge, these guys, Shadowban, Sebs and Allie, the Gnomes, all awesome. Support independent investigative journalism.
Yep.
Under federal law. So, and by the way, Shadowban Refugee also is now on Twitter, and also he put out a Medium piece recently, which I highly recommend everybody read as well. So,
Right.
If a federal employee owns stock in a company, here, this is just like the basic stuff. And we covered Nancy Pelosi and her wonderful stock options predictions and Paul's amazing ability to predict the future and to pick winners when it came to stocks and options.
Almost like she had a superpower that just, allowed her to make decisions that could have, affect the stock market and then choose stocks based off those decisions. But anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So here, the applause, the law applies whether the employee has any decision-making authority or if the matter can plausibly impact the stock price, right? So, conflict of interest. It's basics. People who work for publicly traded companies, they cannot trade in those company stocks, unless it's in a given window, and they have to not have certain knowledge of certain things. It's unbelievable. So in each violation of the law carries 5 years in jail and $50,000 fine. But members of Congress, what happens to them? I believe it's a $500 fine. Right. They are free to actively trade an individual stock while voting on bills that would directly impact the stock's price. This seems like no-brainer stuff, and it's happening on a daily basis. And again, everyone from Pelosi to John Boehner stood to benefit from legislation being considered at the time that they were in, the investments were being made. This was the Stock Act. Right, so it sounded good, right? They had to report any disclosure within 45 days, right? And the penalty is a small one if they blow through the deadline, which is only $200. Now, they do have to disclose, and when they do, it's usually big news. Somebody gets it, and you can see Robbie or Sludge or somebody does a story exposing what their holdings are and what their activity is.
Yeah, based off that being public, but that's the public stuff.
Right, but there is bipartisan interest in legislation that would ban it, supported by 3/4 of Americans. But of course, our wonderful Democratic leaders in the House and Senate that are all multimillionaires themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
And either trade stocks or they hold them and they have them in a quote unquote blind trust, or they're not even so blind. Again, both sides have found themselves, because it's a corporate uniparty, right? You're talking about Richard Burr and Dianne Feinstein, and of course we know famously about Nancy Pelosi and Kelly Loeffler. Her husband actually, I believe, is the president of the New York Stock Exchange. And then you've got Richard Burr, one of 3 senators to oppose the Stock Act, sold up to $1.7 million shortly before the market tanked. And then I believe he started to buy tech companies and PPE companies as well. Pretty unreal. Justice Department dropped the probes into Loeffler, Feinstein, and Inhofe. But Richard Burr, thankfully, remains under investigation. I'm sure that'll go nowhere. David Perdue's trading activity increased. And here, John Yarmouth, who famous for being the only representative in Congress to acknowledge MMT, also purchased several cannabis industry stocks while championing legislation. Well, how better to make them go up than to pass legislation? Now, again, we support passing legislation that does that, but profiting while doing it privately is not necessarily cool, and certainly not definitely a conflict of interest. And you want to call down the line, we don't want to see conflicts of interest, right? So we've got Senator Merkley and Raja Krishnamurthy introduced the Ban Conflicted Trading Act. Yes, thank you very much. I didn't practice that. Right.
We probably butchered it, but
probably. Bill required members of Congress and senior staff members to either sell their individual holdings within 6 months of being elected or transfer them into a blind trust with no option for trading till they leave office. I'd be down with that. Okay, we need to end the era in which members of Congress buy and sell individual stocks. I mean, how easy is it for somebody to pick up the phone and have a private conversation with somebody on their cell phone somewhere? I mean, this just opens everybody up to such conflicts and to such corruption. It just seems like it would be obvious. And again, despite the multiple pieces of legislation introduced on the topic, here's the key. Nancy Pelosi has already expressed her opposition. We know this. Okay.
Yep.
Chuck Schumer has yet to comment directly on the issue. However, he's dodged direct questions, stating that he doesn't own any stocks, which is also pretty interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder where all his money sits. It's got to be in real estate if that's the case.
Real estate. Yeah. But it's also, he doesn't necessarily have to own it. He could have family own it. He could have, like wife, kids, anyone that can own stocks. He could just be like, yeah, here, buy some, Moderna real quick.
Yeah.
So.
Buy some Microsoft, buy some Zoom. We're going to be locked up for a while, and everybody's going to have to change the way they communicate and work. I mean, what Zoom stock did during the pandemic has been...
It was crazy, right?
Yeah, I wish I had bought a little, and it's kind of funny because we all kind of knew, like, if we were going to all be locked up, there were certain stocks and certain companies that were going to benefit, and anyone that had any money to buy it and a foresight to do so did profit wildly.